Welcome everybody to the Bay Area Christian Singles, our conversation seminar. Awesome that you guys came out here today. Unfortunately, Nancy couldn't join us because she caught something a couple days ago, but she's on the phone right here, so she's hearing and participating back at home in the comfort of the couch probably. So my name is Brian, and my wife is Nancy. We've been married this year 13 years. We have our two boys, Noah and Micah, back there. Raise your hands, guys. Say hi. Okay. So we're trying to get Noah and Micah ahead of the whole conversation curve. Right? Because guys, we tend to be lacking in this area, so hopefully they get a head start. Before we begin, let me just open us up in a word of prayer, okay? Father, we thank you so much for today, for this opportunity, this venue here, God. Thank you for Sports Basement, opening up their facility for us. And we just pray as we come together today and we discuss the topic of conversations, that you would help us look at it in a different way. That it not be a chore, that it not be something scary, but we look at it as an opportunity to get to know people, to bless people, and to express love for those brothers and sisters that we come into contact all the time, family, friends, coworkers. And we just thank you so much that you give us this time to be together. We pray for amazing fellowship today here and also afterwards for dinner. We thank you and pray in your name. Amen. All right, guys. So thank you so much for attending. In the past, we've had different seminars. The best dating and marriage seminar ever. That's what we called it before. This year, we decided to make the seminar specifically geared towards conversation skills. Now, you may be asking, what is it about conversation skills that's so important? In our experience in working with guys and girls, especially guys, girls have issues too when it comes to conversations, but especially guys, we notice that it is a very lacking skill. And when it comes to conversations, if we don't do well in conversations, we're really tying ourselves up. For example, it's like playing basketball without being able to dribble. It's kind of like playing tennis, but you only have, and you're not able to do it like a backhand, for example. Maybe it's like swimming, not being able to breathe, right? So you're really inhibiting yourself when it comes to so many different parts of our life, not just in dating. So as we talk about conversations today, don't just think about it as, hey, how am I going to learn things today so that I can talk to a guy or a girl on my next date? That is great, but think about it in a more broader perspective. Because conversation skills are going to be so important for every part of your life, especially if you find someone and if you get married and you end up having kids. Because at that point, your ability to have conversations and get to know people and get to communicate your views with that person are going to be even more important. So raise your hand if this is your first time you've ever been to a BACS event. All right. So we had about 50 people register or so. 15 people who registered were brand new, never been to a BACS event ever. So really glad for those who came out for the first time. A little bit about ourselves. Some of you guys that have been here before heard the spiel, so forgive me. I'll go through real quick. So our mission is equipping and connecting Bay Area Christian singles for dating and marriage. We talk about equipping and connecting. We do monthly events so that we are able to connect, bring everybody together, meet, hang out. The reason that's important is because if you're single and you want to get married, if you're not meeting people, your chances of getting married are pretty slim. And the other thing to emphasize here would be equipping. Equipping is important because if we are lacking the tools, we're not going to get the job done. If I told you, hey, the toilet needs fixing, you come to my house with the wrong tools, you're not going to get the job done. And when it comes to dating and marriage, one of the most important tools is the ability to sit down and have a conversation. Now, we also talk about our vision, which is using dating and marriage to bring out the life-transforming power of the gospel. As we talk about these topics, as you come to BACS events, hopefully you see that what we're trying to emphasize is not just, hey, here are some tips to help you date and get married. We want to approach it from a big perspective so that you guys see how being a Christian, having your sins forgiven, having the ability to have this relationship with God where you are transformed in that relationship it impacts so many different parts of your life. And one of the areas that we talk about constantly is, for example, when it comes to guys and rejection. A lot of us guys, we deal with rejection, and because of the fear of rejection, we don't go out there and we don't take the effort to ask girls out, go on a date, because we're afraid of being rejected. But when you become a believer, that fear of rejection should go away. Once we understand that we've been accepted by God, and there's no longer the need to be afraid of getting rejected by a person, because we've been accepted by God. And we break down our entire spiel, our entire approach with the 4 cups paradigm. And the 4 cups paradigm is basically a way of looking at your life, breaking down all the different areas of your life when it comes to dating and marriage into 4 different areas to figure out exactly where is it that I'm lacking. As we mentioned earlier, if you're playing basketball, if you're not good at dribbling, that's an issue. If you're not good at passing, that's another issue. If you're not good at playing defense, that's another issue. This is a way of breaking it down. Like, am I lacking when it comes to passing? Then I need to focus on passing a little more. Am I lacking in defense? Then I need to focus on defense a little more. So these are the 4 areas we've broken down. The first one is the spiritual worldview. This is the big picture, the most important thing when it comes to your ability to date and have a successful marriage. And we'll cover some of the topics in a little bit. Life maturity. Life maturity talks about issues that are relevant to areas of your life where if you're lacking and you haven't developed it, then it's going to really inhibit you when it comes to dating and marriage. One of those areas when it comes to life maturity is the ability to have conversations. Dating approach. We also talk about the dating approach. If we have a very flawed dating approach, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know how to navigate through that, we're going to be the perpetual dater. We're going to be dating. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years goes by so fast, and we realize, hey, I haven't been asking this guy or this girl the right questions. And lastly, the network cup, which is the question of how many people who are single, dateable of the opposite sex you know that are in your life. And if you are not constantly meeting people on a regular basis, then your chances of getting married are pretty slim. So let me just dive into each one of these briefly, and then we'll go into our conversation seminar. Now, the first cup is a spiritual worldview cup. What we try to do is transform our perspective so that we don't have flawed views that keep us from getting in a relationship and getting married. One of them is this myth of this Mr. Miss right out there. We're waiting for that soulmate. We're waiting for the perfect one, the other half. And we're just constantly waiting, looking for that person. And if we have this view, we're probably not going to find that person because whoever we meet, we think we're going to just have this amazing, exciting experience. And they're going to, from the get-go, check all the boxes. And we're going to be like, that's the one that I'm going to marry. And if that's the case, we're probably going to write off a lot of people. We also talk about this idea of the perfect match and how there is no perfect match. And when we wait for the perfect match, we're probably just going to keep waiting. Talk about arranged marriages, why arranged marriages can work, because if we understand how arranged marriages can work, then we understand how marriages work. Marriage is not eternal, even though Hollywood tells us, hey, we get together, we fall in love, and we live happily ever after. That actually is a very unbiblical view of marriage, because marriage actually only lasts for this lifetime. And we talk about the ultimate incentive to love your spouse, how we are able to create that feedback loop where we're inclined to love our spouse even when it's really difficult. And the biggest question is, of course, why date or why get married? Or more importantly, what is the purpose of life? Because that question actually drives the answer to why date and why get married. So that's the first cup, the spiritual worldview. And this is the most important cup because it really lays the foundation for everything else. Second cup, life maturity. Overcoming fear, embracing rejection. Talk about how we change, lasting change versus changing ourselves just to make the relationship work. Because a lot of times, guys and girls get together, and then the guy or girl has issues, and they change. But in the end, the change isn't lasting. They're just doing it for the sake of the relationship, to make it work. Talk about Jesus' words, it is more blessed to give than to receive, and how that is the dynamic we should live for in a marriage relationship. Hurting people, and we talk about how that dynamic can be changed once we have experienced love from God. God's love that we experience in our relationship transforms our love for other people in our life. Why Christians should have marriage. Everyone's problem, number 6, is actually not being single or not being married. Everyone's problem actually is discontentment. And lastly, conversation skills. And by the way, at the end, there will be a QR code. If you want to sign up to share your email with everybody else, I will also send out the PowerPoint for today in that email, okay? Third cup, talk about a roadmap for dating. A lot of us, we get into relationships, we have no idea what the roadmap looks like. And unfortunately, we have a lot of people who end up dating for years and years and they don't really know where they're going. How about developing dating team? Can girls ask guys out? We have an answer for that, which is the IKEA method. What is the goal of your dates? When we go on a date, what's the goal? Is it just to have fun? Talk about testimonies, how it's so important, and it tells you so much in so little time. Dangers of infatuation, and the biggest mistake guys and girls make when it comes to the dating approach. And lastly, the fourth cup, which is the network cup. And the network cup talks about your single, dateable people in your pool. The people in your life that you know who are single, Christian, and then once you get the first three cups together, the last cup is the one you need to work on. What it means is this. It means it's a numbers game. If you're not proactively going out and dating, getting to know other guys and girls, your chances aren't going to change that much. If you meet like one single Christian a month, that means you're meeting 12 in a year. Your chances of being married a year from now are pretty slim unless you do something about it. So we came up with a 10-1-1 goal, which is meet 10 single dateable Christians of the opposite sex each month. Go out to an event, meet 10. Easy, guys. You guys are going to, if you're here today, you're going to meet more than 10 people already today before you leave, okay? So you're going to already check off that first goal. Second goal is organize one single social event with your friends. Get together with 2 people today and say, hey, we're going to have a hike. We're going to have a dinner. We're going to have a breakfast next week. Just have one event, and all of you guys invite other single Christian friends. Bring them together, and there, you've already met probably another 5 or 6 next week. And then lastly, go on a date with one person a month. And when I say date, it doesn't have to be a fancy restaurant, doesn't have to be a romantic candlelight dinner. All you need to do is go out, get to know someone, whether it's coffee or just going to a farmer's market or whatever it is. If you don't meet this goal, it's fine. The problem is this: most of us, we don't have a goal. And because we don't have a goal, we don't see any progress. But if you have a goal, I guarantee you, and I've seen it in many of us here, because you guys share your success stories with us, and a lot of you guys here today, I already know you guys are destroying it when it comes to this goal. It's not that impossible, guys, so don't feel discouraged, okay? Here's another way of looking at the 4 cups in a different way. It's a wedding cake. The most important part is at the bottom, the spiritual worldview, life maturity, dating approach, and then the network. All right, so why improve our conversation skills? Why? If you think about life, if you want to learn how to play tennis, you could probably find a group that helps you out. You could probably find a coach and pay the coach and they'll help you. If you want to learn a specific language, there's someone out there for that. But as you are growing up, how many times have you been sat down by somebody to say, hey, let me help you with your ability to have conversations? Probably very few, or probably 0. I know for myself, I've never had that experience myself, where someone says, hey, let me show you, let me share with you how you could be better at conversations. The reason why improving your conversation skills is so important is because this: if you are not good at conversations, you probably aren't going to have too many dates. You may have one date, but you're probably not going to have the second date or third date. And if you don't have dates, you're probably not going to get married, okay? The most important thing is this: when it comes to dates, the most important thing is not fun, it is getting to know each other. And the only way to get to know each other is through conversations. You're not going to sit there at a coffee table and write your thoughts out and exchange them, right? You're going to sit down and you're going to speak to each other and have a conversation. So if we're not able to manage that, we're going to be working really hard against everything else. We're going to be working against ourselves, really, to be in the best place to be able to get to know a person and to let the other person get to know us. Second, you can't gauge if it's a good fit if you can't have good conversations. So don't go on dates and think, hey, we had such a good time, it was so fun, we did such a fun event. That's all wonderful. But the most important thing is this: did you have good conversations with the other person where you guys got to know each other more? Now, if you have good conversations, you're able to have good conversations. It doesn't mean the relationship's going to work out. But I guarantee you this, it means that you're dating efficiently. You can go on a date and have poor conversation skills. Go on a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth date, and then on the eighth date find out, hey, it's not a good fit. Or maybe you could have better conversation skills and go on 1 or 2 dates and find out right there that, hey, it's probably not going to work out. Because your conversation skills helps you understand how you guys fit. Third, improving conversation skills is going to help you socially, professionally, relationally. Okay? Socially, if you're lacking friends, what could help is improving your conversation skills. A lot of us guys, we don't have a lot of friends. Why? Because we're not good at having conversations with other people. Professionally, if you want to be the best you can be professionally, you got to network. And you're not going to be able to network if you're always in your cubicle keeping to yourself. Lastly, relationally. If you want to have a good marriage life, you have to have good relationships with your in-laws. You're not going to have good relationships with your in-laws if you're not able to carry a good conversation with your in-laws. You're not going to have a good parenting approach if you're not able to speak to your kids as they're growing up and to adjust your conversation styles as they go from little kids to older kids to teenagers and even adults. Also, improving conversation skills, it's really key for evangelism. If you say, hey, I'm so bad at evangelism, well, it's probably also because your conversation skills may be lacking. If you're good at conversation skills, you're going to be so much better, so much more comfortable when it comes to evangelism. And lastly, conversation skills, you need to improve it. Why? Because it's perishable. You cannot expect, I was good at conversations 5 years ago, and I am going to be good at conversations now. You need to work on it. Just like when it comes to basketball, if you realize you're not good at dribbling, you just need to go out there and start dribbling more and more. All right, common objections. Some people will be, hey, I don't need this conversation seminar. Obviously, you guys don't feel that way because you're here. But I'll address some of the objections anyway. Some people say, oh yeah, none of this stuff is special. None of it is new. Yeah, none of it is new. But the question to ask yourself is not, is it new? Are you practicing these things? Some of these things we're talking about, you're going to say, this is so obvious. But the thing is, we notice that these issues are lacking in a lot of folks in BACS, which is why we feel it's important to bring it up, okay? So don't ask just the question like, is this new? Have I heard of it before? Ask yourself how you are putting this into practice. Some people say, hey, I'm just not good at conversations. That's a fair argument, but I'll say this. Everybody can improve, and if you feel like you're really bad, you probably have the most improvement early on. I grew up, believe it or not, super shy, super quiet kid, never made eye contact, never would talk to strangers up until I was 17. When I became a Christian at the age of 17, things just changed because I realized that I have something to say and I had the desire to speak to people. So I went to college right after I became a Christian and just started talking to people on campus, just sharing the gospel with them. And before you know it, you start developing a lot of conversation skills, the ability to speak. And before you know it, I tell people back in the day I wasn't able to speak with people and they wouldn't believe me. And it's really a God thing. So if you're a Christian, understand this. Your ability to improve your conversation skills are going to affect every part of your life, especially when it comes to evangelism. Some people say, oh, I don't need to hear this, I just need to wing it. Winging it, if you're good, then that's great. But everyone is working at their own baseline. If your baseline of conversation skills is very low, you're only winging whatever it is you have at that baseline. So what we want to do is improve that baseline, cover principles. Hopefully you guys keep it in mind, put it in practice for the next 30 days, and then at that point, if you wing it, you're going to be much better off. Okay? Lastly, some people say it feels fake. When it comes to conversation skills, that's one way to look at it, to say it's fake. But another way to look at it is to say we are adapting. When it comes to conversations, you don't talk to everyone the same way. Okay? You're not going to talk to your parents the same way you talk to your friends. You're not going to talk to a 5-year-old kid the same way you talk to your coworkers. Now, are we going to say that's fake? No. Because you understand that depending on the circumstance, depending on who you're speaking with, we adapt our conversation skills. And that's the same when it goes on being on a date. We're going to adapt our conversation skills because that environment, when you're on a date with someone, is going to require certain things that you're not going to need when you're talking to a buddy that you've known for 30 years. So what is the goal of our conversations? This is very important. What is the goal? When we have conversations with people, whether it's on a date or with a stranger at church, someone at work, what is the goal of our conversations? The goal is not just to talk. Okay, so don't feel like, hey, as long as I'm talking, then I'm being good and I'm having a successful conversation. The goal is not just to get to know each other as well. Okay, that is part of it. Getting to know each other is a very important part of having conversations. But I want to broaden our perspective on the goal, the purpose of our conversations. Now, you guys know Louis Armstrong? What a Wonderful World. Raise your hand if you know the song. All right. So there's a verse in there that goes like this. The colors of the rainbow so pretty in the sky are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. So this verse here, if you think about it, encapsulates so much of what the Bible wants us as Christians to do. And what is that? In this verse right here, he sees friends shaking hands, and all they're saying is, how do you do? But really what they're saying is they're really saying, I love you. And one thing I want to press upon us today is this. Every conversation you have with whoever it is, whether it's a new person at church, a friend from your childhood, someone at work, is an opportunity to show love to that person. We can show love through different means, okay? Buying them something, cooking them something, helping them out with a project or whatever it is. But one of the best, most effective ways to show love to another person is to give them your time and to sit down, to listen to them, and to speak with them. That right there is priceless. If you are able to be a master at having conversations with people, you will be a walking blessing to whoever you come in contact with. So, conversations are to develop the friendship. Conversations are a way of loving each other as well. And conversations are the way we preach the gospel. I really, really want to emphasize, because our group is not just about dating. I want all of us to leave with a desire for more than just meeting someone. One of those desires is to share the gospel with people and help them see God. If you are good at conversations, you can sit down with a random friend, a random stranger, share the gospel with them without them even really knowing. Because you are prodding and you're asking questions. You're getting to know their desires, their dreams. You're getting to know the difficulties and trials that they're facing. And you're able to approach that and share the gospel with them to address the issues that they're needing addressing in their life. Now, having the right goals leads to less anxiety. Remember, when it comes to conversations, what we often think when it comes, especially when it comes to dating, is I need to impress. We go on a date and we think, I need to really work on my conversations. I need to ask the right question because I need to impress this person. I need to get them to like me. That is not the goal of your dates. That's not the goal of the conversations. If your goal is to be a blessing, to develop that friendship, to get to know them, to show love to them, then it changes the entire dynamics and there is zero anxiety. Same with evangelism. I keep saying this all the time. If you're good at evangelism, you're going to be good at dating. Because when you're good at evangelism, you understand what the goal of evangelism is. It is not to convert the person. Same with dating. The goal is not to get them to like you. The goal is to develop that friendship and get to know each other. So if you have the right goal, there's less anxiety. And secondly, you have better results. If you understand your goal, you understand that the result, if you understand the goal, you're going to have better results because you're not forcing the conversation. You're not trying to manipulate them and get them to like you. People will see your sincerity, and you'll be better able to have good conversations. All right. So we're going to cover this slide, and then we're going to break out throughout the next hour and a half. We have to end at about 4:50 cutoff, okay? Because we have to be out of here at 5, and we'll need to clean up. So 4:50 is our cutoff. We're going to probably have 3, maybe 4 exercises where you guys get to talk to each other and put into practice what we're hearing today. So first, before you say a word, you are already speaking to the person that you're having a conversation. The moment you walked here today, walked into this room right here, you are already speaking through your words. So when it comes to conversations, we need to understand that you have to work on your nonverbal communication from the beginning. Now, what are some of these things that we're talking about? Don't just focus on your words. We tend to get caught up with words. Like, oh, what should I say on this date? What kind of questions should I ask? Don't just focus on the words you say. Focus on this. Look like you want to be there. Okay? Look like you want to be there. Now, this sounds obvious, but I'll tell you this, and I'll pick on the guys. Because there are some of us guys, we've been doing monthly events for BACS for over about 2 years now. And I have to say, sometimes us guys, we don't do the best job of looking like we want to be there. Okay? We go into a group and we have this face, and it looks like we're about to go to the dentist's office to get our teeth pulled. Okay? I mean, it's just this very, very sad look. Look like you want to be there. If you're on a date, look like you want to be there. And how do we do that? Here are a few things I want us to focus on. And this section right here, I'm going to keep this up for all our exercises, and I want you guys to put these into practice during each of our exercises here today. The first one is eye contact. I want to make sure that you guys understand that whenever you are having a conversation with someone, you are maintaining eye contact. And when I say maintain eye contact, there's two extremes, okay? So don't get me wrong on this one. I'm not saying like this. Hi, Robert. Okay? And the other extreme is talking to someone and saying, hey, Jen, yeah, how's your day? Yeah, had a good weekend? You do not want to avoid eye contact. I'm not saying always look at the person. Sometimes you're talking and you're going to be like, oh, yeah, you're going to lose eye contact here and there. But for the most part, you want to maintain eye contact. And here's another thing. I can't teach this, okay? You just got to figure out yourself. When you maintain eye contact, it needs to be friendly eye contact. When I say friendly eye contact, let me tell you what non-friendly eye contact is, and you figure out what friendly eye contact is, okay? When the person is talking to you and they're looking at your eyes, they shouldn't be thinking, this guy's thinking something about our conversation. This guy just, like, he didn't agree with what I just said. I cannot articulate how it is, but when you're talking to someone and they're not paying attention, even though they're making eye contact, or they don't want to be there, you could tell from the eye contact. So make sure you have a pleasant, friendly manner when it comes to maintaining eye contact. Next, smiling. Okay, you guys are probably thinking, this is third grade stuff. It is, but here's the thing. We need to practice all of this stuff together. You could have some amazing questions to ask, but if you don't have that smile, people are going to feel like they're not going to be able to speak with you. When I say smile, we're not talking smiling with your lips. Okay? So smiling with your lips is a fake smile, which is basically like this. Okay? People can tell that a mile away if you're smiling that. You need a smile with your entire face. Okay? Entire face meaning eyes, forehead, the edge of your eyes right there, your nose, your cheeks. You need to smile like, how you doing? Right? You need to smile with your whole face. And the reason why you want to do that is if you don't have a smile, but you come into a group or you're on a date and your face is like how you look like when you're going to a dentist's office, people are going to feel inhibited. The guy or girl is going to feel, oh my goodness, did I catch this guy on a bad day? Like, what's going on? He doesn't want to, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't continue the conversation because it seems like he or she doesn't want to be a part of this conversation. You want to lay out the welcome mat and say, hey, I want to talk. I want to hang out with you. So make sure you have a good smile. And as we put into practice later, these different principles, if you are partner with somebody else and they're not doing a good job in one of these areas, I want you to share. I want us to help each other. Because if you're not doing a good job and no one's telling you, you're not going to know. So please evaluate each other and be open to being evaluated. Firm handshake. when you meet someone, make sure you give the person you meet a firm handshake. Now, sometimes it's not always possible because hands get caught at the wrong time. My fingers get caught and the shake happens with just my fingers. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but we should be making firm handshakes whenever we're meeting people, and even if we're seeing someone again for the second time or third time. Fourth, warm greeting. If you're meeting someone and they introduce themselves to you, give them a warm greeting. Here's a non-warm greeting. Hi. What's your name? I'm Brian. Okay? That says, I don't want to talk to you. You might want to talk to the person, right? But it tells the world, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk. You need to give a warm greeting and say, hey, how you doing? Hey, Warren. Hey, nice meeting you, Warren. Nice meeting you. Glad you could come again, Warren. So that's what you need to do when it comes to meeting someone. You always end it when you first meet someone. Not end it. You always say when you meet someone or see them again, good seeing you again. Nice meeting you. Okay? Be warm. E, good posture. Okay? One of the things that guys especially we lack is bad posture. If you're going around with bad posture, like it just looks like you lack confidence and you don't want to be there. So we need to work on posture. And when it comes to working on posture, it's not as simple as like that, right? The reason why we have bad posture is because we have weak muscles. So you need to focus on strengthening muscles to get better posture. Also, when it comes to good posture, one thing that you guys want to do also is when you're shaking hands with someone, you don't want to just be like this. I'm just standing here and sticking my hand out. I want to come to the person and I want to lean in and I want to give them a handshake. Okay? That says a lot more when I'm just like, nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. Also, when it comes to posture, if you're sitting down and someone's meeting you and they're standing up, do them the courtesy and just do a quick stand. Okay? It gives a lot of it shows a lot of respect and it shows you value the meet. Another thing you want to do also is if you're wearing sunglasses, just flip them up real quick when you're meeting someone. Don't just keep the sunglasses down. Even if it's bright outside, you can put them back down later on. Take the sunglasses off. Oh, Jen was also talking about masks. Lower your mask when you're meeting someone, just to give them the courtesy to say, hey, I'm glad I'm meeting you. And lastly, good energy. This one is hard for me to convey, but you can tell if someone wants to be there or not. It's an overall feeling about that person. Do they have good energy when they're meeting you? Are they meeting you and they're like saying, hi? If you're that soft-spoken, I'm not saying you're being a mean person, but it's going to come off like you don't really care. Okay, so I want you guys in your groups to meet each other and put this into practice individually, one-on-one with everyone in the group. So we'll give you the next 3 minutes to do that. Okay? Go for it. Okay, so we're going to continue now. Let's take a look at this slide right here. When it comes to conversations, what is it that you need for a good conversation? You need two people. Okay? You need two people. It takes two to tango. Unfortunately, you could be the best at having conversations, but if the other person is not willing or not equipped, you're not going to have a good conversation. Which is why this seminar is so important, because the more people who are equipped to be able to have good conversations, the better our chances are of getting to know each other on dates and figuring out early on, hey, this is someone I want to get to know more, or maybe it's not someone I want to get to know as much. So it takes two to tango. Here's some illustrations of how we should look at conversations. One is the ping pong illustration. Okay, and when I say ping pong, I know some people here are competitive. I'm not talking about competitive ping pong. Okay, I'm talking about like kids, like helping each other play ping pong, going back and forth, back and forth. Make it easy for the other person to hit the ping pong back to you. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is for those of you who like math, the 60-40% ratio. Basically, try to allow the conversation to have the other person talk 60% of the time and you talk 40. Now, if you don't hit it at 60-40, it's fine. At the end of the day, if you both try to allow the other person to speak, you're probably going to end up somewhere around 50-50 when it comes to how much speaking there is. A couple of things, very important. When it comes to conversations, do not dominate the conversation. No matter how much you like the topic, no matter how much of an expert you are in whatever topic you're talking about, do not dominate the conversation. Make room for the other person to be able to speak. Which also means this: if you're the type of quiet, shy, introverted person, introverted meaning you don't like being in the proximity of people, you feel tired. Like if you're an introvert, you're gonna come here today, and afterwards you're gonna say, oh my goodness, I can't take this. I'm gonna have to wait another 3 months. You're probably an introverted person. Extroverted person will say, hey, can we do this again tomorrow? Okay? The introverted individuals usually are not as good when it comes to conversations. Now, are you doomed? No. Because you could adapt yourself and apply certain skills and principles to balance yourself out. So don't be absent if you're a quiet person. You especially when it comes to a one-on-one conversation, you have to say something. Okay? You have to participate in the conversation. And it's a hurdle, but here's the thing. When it comes to conversation skills, if you have a certain disposition, introverted, shy, you're going to be more lacking in this area. It's just a fact, okay? Everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses. But in this area, when it comes to conversations, if you have a certain disposition, you're going to have to work extra hard in this area. Fourth, small talk is necessary. Now I hear all the time people are like, oh, I hate small talk. Don't look at small talk as a bad thing. Don't hate small talk. A lot of times people say, oh, I just want to have big talk. No, you don't want to just have big talk. People just say that, okay? Maybe you do want to have big talk. But here's the thing. You don't want to just go into big talk with every person. Because you may go into a big talk with someone who doesn't want to talk, or someone who doesn't want to talk about that topic, and now it's going to be a bad conversation. Small talk is necessary, okay? It's like starting a fire. I'll show you an illustration in a second about that. Canned, boring small talk is okay. What I mean by canned conversations, canned questions, we're going to talk about that a lot today. Canned questions are the common questions everybody asks all the time. Hi, how are you, Christopher? Where are you from, Christopher? Like, what do you do, Christopher? These are the canned question where it's just like we just pop open the can and boom, it just comes out. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to plan anything. It's just a question everybody knows and we throw it around all the time. Are canned questions bad? No, they're not bad. Some people say, oh, I hate canned questions. The question itself means nothing. It's what you do with the response to that question that makes a difference. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Sorry. Follow-up questions are the most important question. So we talked about canned questions. Don't worry about canned questions. Again, the most important question is not the first question, it's the second question, the third question that you build upon based on whatever they answer for that first question. We're going to go in depth on this in a little bit. Now, here's another illustration. Small talk is like hot potato. You guys ever play hot potato as kids? You ever play hot potato as adults? Hopefully nobody raised their hand. When it comes to hot potato, the goal is this. The potato's hot, you don't want to hold on to it, okay? And you don't want to drop it on the ground. You want to just pass it along to the next person. So like in a group like this, if you guys are having a conversation, you don't want to have two people talking to each other and the whole time everybody else is just listening on the conversation. You want to pass it around. You want to share and say, hey, what do you think, Spencer? What do you think, Jen? And distribute the ability to have the conversation. So that's one way of looking at hot potato. When you're on a date with another person, you're one-on-one, you're playing hot potato. You speak for a little bit, but you throw back at the person and let them speak for a little bit. Here's another way, fire. When it comes to fire, when you start fire, you can't just light up this nice big log right here. Firewood for campfires requires something like that, something big that burns for a long time. These are essentially your big, deep, significant conversations. Unfortunately, you can't just start a fire with that right away. What you need to do is you need to work with that tinder right there. Small, little, easy to burn flakes, shavings. You start that, and it starts burning quickly. But this burns out really quick. So what you need to do is you need to start throwing a little bit of kindling, some twigs, some small branches. And that actually catches on fire, and the fire gets a little bigger. And what you really want to get to is the point to the point where this firewood is burning. Now you can have all the tinder or small talk, but it's going to burn so fast it's not going to be able to light this fire in time, and the fire is going to go out. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you work your way up with small talk. Small talk, look at it this way, is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to develop the conversation. Here's another illustration, okay? This guy right here, what he did was he used a pick and he basically chipped away a bunch of holes right here. And then what he did was he took these small metal wedges and he starts using a sledgehammer and he starts pounding the wedges. And he starts going from the bottom wedge and works his way up, and then he works from the top all the way down. And he starts pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. And he doesn't seem like he's getting anywhere, but eventually what happens is this. The whole rock splits open in half. Now, this is a real life illustration for Nancy and me. When we first met, we started talking. We had small talk. And the topics that allowed us to crack open the rock were basically her becoming a marriage family therapist, going through seminary, and then trying to get her 3,000 hours, and then for me, living overseas as a tent maker. So because of those topics, they came up, and from that point on, it was like firewood. We could talk for like hours at that point. All your small talk is doing is to find that topic, whatever it is, where you guys share in common, where you guys could jump into a deeper conversation. That's why small talk is important. If you're good at small talk, then you're going to be so much better when it comes to conversations. Now, how to ask good questions. Canned questions are not necessarily bad. It's what you do with them next. We're going to talk about that in depth in a little bit. Close-ended or yes-no questions versus open-ended questions. Now, closed or yes-no questions are essentially questions that go like this. Where are you from? The person's going to answer the question and say, I'm from Sunnyvale. You're going to ask a question like, what do you do? They're going to answer and say, I do this or whatever. Yes-no questions. Is this your first time at a BACS event? They'll probably answer yes or no, right? So are those questions bad? No, they're not necessarily bad. Ideally, the best questions eventually that you want to move towards are open-ended questions. Open-ended questions that ask something where they need to expound and share more. So instead of saying, is this your first time at a BACS event? You could say, after they tell you, hey, I've been to BACS, this is my second event, you could ask them a question like, so what is it that drew you to come back to a BACS event? And there you go into a deeper conversation. Your whole point is this. When you ask that second conversation, that rock might not crack. That third question you ask might not crack that rock. But you keep chipping and keep chipping at it until you find a topic where the rock cracks. And eventually at that point, you guys just keep talking. Okay? But you got to find that topic. You got to find what it is that interests the other person. And what is more important is what interests the other person than what interests you. So let's just say you like mountain biking. Do not just say, I'm going to take the conversation of mountain biking because I like mountain biking. Your job is to probe and find out what it is that the other person likes to talk about. And last, good things to ask for their opinion, ask for their advice, and ask hypothetical questions. We're going to go in depth with all of this, but I'm just laying it out for you guys. Now, examining the common canned question. These are the 5 questions we're going to use for the rest of today. These are basic common questions. They're not sexy, they're just really simple questions, but I want to equip us so that when we are asked, or when we ask the most basic canned question, we are able to figure out how to bring the conversation to a deeper place. If you could bring these questions to a deeper place, then you're set. You're set. Okay? And it's not like a roadmap where I say, hey, this is what you say. After she says this is what you say. It's just figuring out in your head, here is my destination, and I just need to get to this destination. The most common canned questions are, how are you? Now, you're not going to ask that necessarily if you met a person for the first time. Usually, it's if you met someone and you are meeting them again. Where do you live? What do you do for work? How do you know Nancy and Brian, or whoever it is, whatever situation you're in? Maybe it's like, another friend. And how did you hear about blank? In this case, it's BACS. If it's another event, then just say, how did you hear about whatever it is? So these are the 5 questions we're going to work with today, over and over and over and over again, until you get an idea. So that next time when you're asked this question, you are able to navigate through these questions and try to get into a deeper conversation. So, here's back to the illustration about starting a fire. Here are the questions right here. This is the Tinder you're working with. Small talk questions. Those are the 5 questions we just mentioned. Now, whatever the answer is to those questions, you're going to ask a follow-up question. This follow-up question is going to be more important. This is the kindling. And based on the answer to your follow-up question, hopefully, not always, but hopefully, you're going to get into a big topic, a deeper topic where you both can talk about that topic in depth. And this happens after you guys know you want to talk about that. This big talk happens after you guys know you guys want to talk to each other. And how do you know that? Based on the small talk and follow-up questions. Based on their answers to those questions, you'll get a good idea of, do they want to speak with me more? Or do they want to just leave? Or do they want to just jet out? Now, are there people who want to speak more, but they give the impression that they don't want to be there? Yeah. That's why we mentioned the principles in the beginning. Your energy, your smiling, your posture, and all that. Okay, that's going to tell the person you want to be there. And secondly, big talk happens when you guys know you guys want to talk. And secondly, when you found a topic that interests both. Ideally, ideally both, but most importantly for you, a topic that interests the other person. All right? Now, we talked about how to ask good questions, but we're going to also talk about how to give good answers. So, one thing, if you remember anything today, remember this, okay? That first point right there. Don't just answer yes or no. Don't just answer the actual question. Whatever question someone asks you, look at it this way. Do not answer just that question. I don't care if it's a yes, no, close-ended question. Do not just answer that question. You need to do what we call give to get. Give to get meaning this. You are giving them something in the conversation so that you could get a deeper conversation. You could get a question that's asked back at you. You could get a response from them, something they end up wanting to share with you. This will be more clear as we go through the examples more specifically. And when it comes to giving answers, when in doubt, reciprocate the question. If you're stuck in a place and you can't think of if they ask you a question and you don't know what to say, you answer the question and say, hey, do you like BACS? Yes. And you don't know what to say, then you just say, do you like BACS? Okay? If you are not sure, your last resort is always reciprocate the question. Okay? Now, here we're going to get into nuts and bolts, guys. Examining the common, we're going to go through each of these 5 common canned questions. How are you? If someone says, how are you, one answer you can say is, I'm well. I'm doing great. That is a conversation killer. First off, the question itself is difficult. It's not always the best. I understand people ask that, but you bump into a phrase and say, hey, how's it going? It's not always the easiest question to answer because it's like, okay, well, my car broke down, but I don't think I want to tell them about that. I had this fight with my boss. It's like, well, how do I answer that question, right? So most of the time we just give a generic answer. Hey, I'm good, I'm well. And this is a conversation killer because it's just saying, okay, I heard your question, and that's my response. It doesn't say, I want to participate in this conversation more. It's vague. Maybe you want to participate in this conversation more, but we're so conditioned to answer, hey, I'm doing well, that we just give that answer, and unfortunately the other person can't read it and say, hey, do they want to talk or do they not want to talk? So, Give to get, as I mentioned earlier, is essentially this. Instead of just saying I'm well, you're saying, oh, it's been a tough week, but I'm glad it's the weekend. Why do you say that? You're saying that because you're giving them something to work with. Okay? There's a lot more that the other person can work with this answer than with this answer. And we're going to dive into that in a little bit. Okay? Next question. Where do you live? Nancy and I, we live in Livermore. If you came up and asked me that and I say Livermore, that is a conversation killer right there. Now, give to get is essentially this. We moved to Livermore when we got married, but I was born and raised in San Francisco, and Nancy was born in Taiwan and raised in San Jose. You don't have to say all of that, but the point is this. Do not answer the question. Or do not just answer the question. Answer the question and make sure you throw something out there to help them participate in the conversation in a deeper way. Next question. What do you do for work? I'm a teacher. Conversation killer. Okay? Instead, you could say, I've been a teacher for 5 years. I teach 9th grade math at a public school in San Francisco. Or you could say, I've been a teacher for 5 years, but I used to be a software engineer for 15 years before then. Now, these two answers here, so much more material to work with than if you were to say, I'm a teacher. Question 4, how do you know John? Or Brian, Nancy, whatever? From church. That's a terrible answer right there. Okay? It's like, okay, like how from church? There's just so many opportunities you're leaving on the table to have a deeper conversation. This is a common friend here now, okay? It's like maybe you're at a dinner party, you're at a BACS event or whatever, and someone invites you. There's so much you could say about the other person to allow both of you to have a better conversation. Another response could be, I met John 10 years ago. He was my co-leader for a small group at our church, and we played badminton every month. Tons of stuff right here for the other person to come back with and continue the conversation. Remember, it's hot potato, right? This is, from church basically is saying, here's the potato, boom, I'm throwing it on the ground, right? or it's like, hey, you hit the ping pong back for me, boom, I'm slamming it back at you. Hot, friendly ping pong and friendly hot potato. Question 5, how did you hear about BACS? From a friend. Through an email, right? Conversation killer. Or you could say, my friend Susie was raving about BACS, but I was a little hesitant because I never liked joining a singles group. It's intimidating joining new groups, but everyone was really welcoming and I've been challenged to attend, right? Something like that. Now, we get deeper now, okay? Question 1 again. So, the first question is, how are you? And instead of saying, I'm well, we're answering with, oh, it has been a tough week, but I'm glad it's the weekend. We're building up on it now. Now, what does this person say who asked the original question? They can say, sorry to hear about a tough week. What made it tough? Okay? Or, I'm glad you made it through the week. What are you looking forward to this weekend? Right there, boom, you've opened up so many opportunities to chit-chat more. Here's the problem. A lot of us, we are conversation killers without knowing it. If there's one thing you could leave here and put into practice, it's this. To understand that it is really up to you in these conversations when it comes to how fruitful the conversation is. It's not all up to you. The other person has to play their part as well. But I guarantee you, for a lot of us, we are killing the conversation before it could even begin. And what happens, the bad thing about it is this. If you meet a guy or a girl today, or at an event, and you are not able to maintain a conversation and you're a conversation killer, you guys might be good for each other. But you'll never find out because you never were able to move deeper into the conversation. Question 2, where do you live? So the answer was we moved to Livermore. I was born and raised in San Francisco. Nancy was born in Taiwan and raised in San Jose. There's tons of questions here. So you can ask, like, so you guys, well, why did you guys choose Livermore? Like, you grew up in San Francisco. How was that growing up in San Francisco? And so, or you could ask, like, so you're from San Francisco, Nancy's from San Jose. How did you guys meet? You can ask about, okay, so you guys been married for 13 years. So have you guys been back to Taiwan? Back to Nancy's, where she was born? You can ask about, hey, do you guys go back to San Jose a lot, San Francisco a lot? Oh yeah, we go there all the time. Why is that? Oh, my mom's in San Francisco, and we go to visit her all the time, and Nancy's parents are down in San Jose. Boom, you get deeper in the conversation. All right, what do you do for work? So that's the answer, which I won't repeat. The follow-up would be, what's the hardest part about teaching ninth grade? How did you get into teaching math? Like, why would you teach math? Oh, that's so cool that you're into math, because I'm not into math. So how in the world did you pick math of all subjects? Boom, that's a whole different conversation right there. Or you could say, how are the public schools in San Francisco? Or you could say, how did you make the change from being a software engineer to being a teacher? That's crazy. I've never heard of someone doing that before. So how did you do that? Why did you do that? And which career do you like better? If money wasn't an issue, would you still be a teacher? Do you ever think about becoming a software engineer again? So many opportunities right there to deepen the conversation. Fourth question, how do you know John? So we talked about badminton, small group. So you could talk about, you can always ask about a funny story about the friend. That's always a go-to. How long did you co-lead the group? How was your experience co-leading the group? I've always been interested in badminton, but it seems really intense, right? How did you get into badminton? What advice do you have if I want to get into badminton? Fifth question, how did you hear about BACS? So the answer is right up there, which I won't repeat. So you could, okay, sorry, I didn't update this. I didn't update this right here. But how did you hear about BACS? Like just off the top of my head. So what is it that you heard the last time that drew you back to BACS? Like, was there something that Brian or Nancy talked about? How did you overcome the fear or hesitancy to go to these singles groups? And we'll actually talk about that in a second as well, because here's a great opportunity to connect with the person, because you can say, hey, you know what, it took me a while to join a singles group as well. How did you overcome the fear? I still have that fear of joining a singles group. So what are tips you have for overcoming your fear? So again, here's an illustration. You keep cracking at it. Keep asking those follow-up questions until you get a breakthrough. Now, putting it into practice now. You're going to put all this into practice right here. And we are going to, as you go through meeting individual, you're going to start asking the canned questions, 1 out of 5 canned questions. You're going to ask each other that, and you're going to give to get in your answer. You're not going to answer the question just as it is. You're going to answer it and answer it with a little more. And then you're going to ask a follow-up question, hopefully something that's open-ended, okay? So, now, when it comes to asking questions, another thing to keep in mind when it comes to asking questions, we said ask open-ended questions, but also there are a couple areas that are very helpful. For example, asking about people's opinions and advice. People love to be asked that. What I mean by that, so if someone asks a question about, like, let's say Fremont, you guys talking about food, you could ask the question like, what's your favorite restaurant? Any recommendations when it comes to restaurants in Fremont? If they say they're a teacher, and we're going back to our common canned questions. Someone says they're a teacher, you can ask them a question like, so what is the hardest part of teaching kids today? If the topic was badminton, as we mentioned earlier, you can ask them a question about why do you think badminton is more popular in Asia than in the West? Right? That's a really good question. They could expound upon why. Maybe go into the history of it. The purpose of this is to get people in their element, to get them to talk about something that they're excited about. Because that, for one, makes the conversation exciting. It's able to keep it going, the hot potato game, it keeps it going. And also, it gets them talking, so eventually, as they're talking, maybe there's something you could branch off on. For example, if you were to ask, like my brother, right, how he got into basketball, he'll say something like, when I was a kid, one of my teacher's brothers had this after-school basketball game, and he actually opened it up to a bunch of us, and he actually was a Christian. And that's how he became a believer, through that friend. So you got to find those little ins as you're asking them these follow-up questions. And then the last question, the last canned question about the BACS event, or whatever event, you can ask questions like, why do you think there are so many more girls attending single events than guys? Right? That opens up all kinds of avenues that you could go down and start having a discussion on. So, besides asking open-ended questions, ask questions about the person's opinions, ask them questions about ask them about advice. Next, ask hypothetical questions. Hypothetical questions lets a person to just expound and share more. So for example, the question about Fremont, right? You guys talk about food, you guys like food or whatever. You ask the question about what kind of food they like, what restaurants they like. You can ask them the question of, if you were to open a restaurant in Fremont, what kind of restaurant would you open? What kind of restaurant do you think Fremont needs to make Fremont like a food hub? What do you think about restaurants, like all the food trucks opening up? Ask them about that. The question about the teacher. You can ask them that since they're a teacher, they've been a teacher for 5, 10, 20 years or whatever, you can ask them, if you could change something about public education, what would be the biggest thing you would change? Right there is opening up like a hypothetical question where if they were to able to change education, what would they say? See, a lot of these questions, you're allowing the other person to talk. Now, if you were to be asked this question, I would hope by now you understand that you need to take this question and you need to run with it, okay? You cannot answer this question. If someone else was asking you, you do not want to kill the conversation. You want to throw something in here. Now, here's how you really want to get deep in the conversation. As you're talking, for example, about this question about, hey, what would you change about the education system? It would be really wise if you were to interject and answer that question with something spiritual, okay? Because that's at the end of the day where we want to go. We want to get into a more spiritual, a deeper conversation. I would answer it if I was a teacher. I would answer this question and talk about how, well, when it comes to our education system, there's a lot of things we can change. But the one thing we can't change that is the most important thing is kids are not coming from a background where they understand that there is a God. We're coming from a perspective where, the education system, we're coming about it where we're trying to teach kids, but at the end of the day, they're not respecting, they don't have the same views on life, morality, or whatever it is, because I think, when it comes to raising children, we're not raising them with this understanding of this absolute truth, this God, whatever it is, okay? It's up to you to decide how you want to bring up God. And once you bring up God, if the other person has some decent level of spiritual maturity, then the conversation starts to pivot towards more spiritual things, okay? For the last question, BACS. You asked them about the BACS event, you might be asking you could ask a question like, hey, if you could organize a singles event for friends, what would you plan, right? That's a great question to ask the person. And then when they say, hey, my plan would be to organize a barbecue, then you say, all right, let's do it. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, I'm serious. It's good to talk to people, share these questions, ask them hypothetical questions, because everyone always wants to talk. Everyone always wants to talk about what they think. And then lastly, you guys probably heard of this, for its last-ditch effort, it's always good to have some questions in mind. Basically, FORD stands for family, occupation, recreation, dreams. These are questions to ask so that you're able to just go to some hip pocket question. You're out of questions, the person's not working with you, you're desperate, you need something, think about these 4 categories. And think about a question that you could ask and then hope that that question would branch off into a deeper conversation, if there's nothing else that's working. If in the natural course of having a conversation you have a bunch of topics that pop up, then you don't need to use this, okay? This is just, hey, if you're stuck, think forward and try to come up with a question there. Now, all right, before we go on to the last exercise, we'll just cover this, conversation etiquette. We could go on and on and on about this, but we'll just cover this briefly. When it comes to having conversations, it's very important to mirror the other person. In their speech, when I say speech, we're talking about the speed, the tone, how they talk. If they're more slow and quiet, you don't want to be, okay? Body language, however their body language is you want to mirror to the best of your ability. If their body language is not good, then don't mirror it. For example, you're sitting on a table, across the table from someone at a coffee shop, and they're slouching in their seat, right? You don't want to mirror that, okay? And also excitement. Ideally, you want to amp it up a little bit, meet their level of excitement, and then add like 1 or 2 notches above that, if you can. If they're super excited, super energetic, then yeah, you don't need to amp it up even more. Next point, do not interrupt. It's very, very easy to interrupt. There are non-verbal cues which say, hey, I want to talk, okay? So don't interrupt, just try to let the person talk. Some of us, we have a tendency to want to interrupt because we have a lot to say. Those of us who have that issue, recognize it, and you need to really focus on not interrupting the conversation. Which the other flip side of that would be essentially give others a chance to talk. If you're the type of person that's constantly talking, and you know who you are, you need to be, hey, I've spoken enough, let me pivot the conversation to the other person. 4, rephrasing what they're saying. So when someone is saying something and it's a long drawn out conversation, a good way of summarizing what they're saying, so you're saying or something to that effect, and to kind of rephrase what they're saying, because 1, it says that you understand and you're hearing what they're saying, and 2, it gives you an opportunity now to internalize what they're saying and then branch off and follow up with another follow-up question. Empathize with the other person. Empathize meaning share their feelings. If they're telling you a story about some struggle that they have, then you need to empathize with the right facial gestures, right verbal responses. If they're happy, then you should be happy. If they're not that happy and they're sharing a struggle, then you want to kind of mirror that as well. Compliments. It's always good to compliment people. Like the example about the teacher. Compliment, oh wow, you've been a public school teacher. It is not easy being a public school teacher nowadays. I've seen videos of public schools and like, I don't know how you do it. Boom, that's a compliment. People love being complimented. So if you are stuck and you don't know what to say and they're telling you something, find a compliment to insert. 7, include others in the conversation. Really, really, really bad examples of this. I was at a wedding one time talking to a guy. All of a sudden, this guy sees another guy. They know each other. I'm already talking to this guy for like 5 minutes. This other guy jumps in and boom, they connect. I'm out of conversation for the next 15 minutes. I'm standing there like, I'm trying to excuse myself, but they're constantly talking back and forth. Very, very rude, okay? If you are in a conversation in a group, you need to do the best of your ability to incorporate the other people. Even if it's a simple thing like, oh yeah, what do you think about that? Okay, just shoot it to them. Maybe they're not very talkative, the third person may not be talkative, it's fine. Just shoot it their way. Maybe they'll share a little something for 5, 10, 15 seconds, and then they don't really want to talk, it's fine. You want to just pass the hot potato, okay? Now, if you're in a group and there are 4 people, ideally, you split up the conversation, okay? You don't want to have 2 people talking and then the other 2 people are just listening. If you are that 3rd or 4th person who's not part of that first conversation, initiate with the other person who's not talking and ask them a question. Any question and branch off. One important thing about branching off is it's very difficult in a group if you're all together in a circle and talking across each other. So if it's like the 4 of us, right? I'm talking to Ray and you 2 are talking, right? Well, I'm talking to Ray. You 2 are going to have a hard time talking because now you're interrupting and really like cutting off our conversation as we're talking. Ideally, one of you would be like squeezing behind me and saying, "Hey, Jen, you know," or whatever. Bring up a question. Branch off into another conversation. Lastly, being opinionated. This is a very, very big one. And notice it happens a lot. And the people who are very, very opinionated never know they're being very opinionated. And when I say being opinionated, I don't mean to say don't have an opinion. You should have opinions and you should have strong opinions. What I'm saying is conveying that I have a strong opinion and nothing you say is going to change anything I believe, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. That is what you want to avoid. So again, it's fine to be very opinionated, but we want to be wise and give room in the conversation so that other people feel like they could talk about the topic as well. So for example, maybe you're very opinionated about online dating. Oh, I'll never do online dating. That's for sinners. Well, if you say that right there with that facial gesture right there, with that animosity, if this person is on a dating app and they've had a lot of good success, they're not going to be, oh, well, I had a good time on dating. They're going to be, Okay? Conversation killer right there, okay? So be careful about being too opinionated, and this is all kinds of topics. Any topic that you could think of, you could be too opinionated on it. Some other examples: politics, church government, how churches do things, right? You could talk about work. Like some people be, oh my gosh, you're a teacher? I can't believe, how can you be a teacher in a public school? Public schools are evil, right? If you approach it in that way, you've just killed the conversation. So these are pointers to keep in mind. Now, for the next 10 minutes, this is what we're going to do. We're going to switch groups one more time. We're going to do 3 rounds. Keep in mind the stuff on the left, those are all your nonverbal principles that we talked about. And then on the right, I want you guys to talk about your can questions, answer the question with give to get, and then either ask the question about opinion, advice, or hypothetical question, or if you're stuck, come up with good forward questions: family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Okay? So we'll do 3 more rounds, and then we will wrap it up. Okay? So let's switch groups one more time. That's the end. The end of our conversation seminar. If you want to join the monthly events, you can join our Facebook group where we post about our events, or email us at bachristiansingles@gmail.com. The group is a private group, so it's not open to the public. If you want to join, Nancy and I just asked that we have a quick conversation with you over the phone, just to get to know you a little bit, share about ourselves. So if you're interested in getting notified via email or joining the Facebook group, please send us an email, let us know you're interested. If you're already on the group, that's where we put everything. All events are on Facebook and on the email list. Another thing is that we send out articles every once in a while, articles about dating and marriage. So even if you're getting stuff from a friend, like your friend's telling you about the events, you want to be a part of the group, highly recommend you just let us know so that you could get everything, including all the articles. Third, if you enjoyed today and you have a singles group, college group, young adult group, whatever, that will benefit from this or one of our other talks, let us know. Lastly, whatever you heard today that benefited you, we encourage you to spread the word, because it takes 2 to tango when it comes to having good conversations, and unfortunately, it's very lacking. And future generations will be even more lacking. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this time to get together, and we just pray that we were able to connect with 1-2 people here today, Lord, and that we would have an opportunity to develop a friendship, Lord. That above dating, Lord, it's about us showing love, loving each other, because that's how the world knows that we are your disciples. And help us to be people who look at every opportunity to have a conversation, and to look at it as an opportunity to bless, to love, to share the gospel, and to be people who are very intentional about our conversations. I just pray that as we partake in dinner together, thank you so much for all your provisions. You give us everything we need, Lord. And thank you for the next few hours, for more opportunities to fellowship together. And it's because of your death and your bringing us together under you, Lord, that we can have this fellowship in Christ. We thank you and pray in your name. Amen. All right, thank you, guys.